Welcome everyone to our morning chat with Brenda. Brenda is a longtime friend of mine. She lives here in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley, and she's a longtime gardener, but I also know her from our local Hawk Watch, where she is one of the official counters and has been the coordinator for our Hawk Watch, where we count migrating raptors each fall. And she's part of my quilt circle. So I know Brenda in many different capacities. And Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to talk about gardening. I have a 3-part gardening series that I'm interviewing folks for. One, it was my good friend, Evelyn, who talked about gardening in the ground. My friend Kirsten, who talked about aeroponic gardening. And now Brenda is going to talk about EarthBoxes, which is a form of container box gardening. So Brenda, tell me a little bit about your past gardening experience and what brought you to the EarthBox gardening system.
Well, I started out with a lot of dead stuff, a lot of failures. It wasn't for, I think a lot of it was, of course, not knowing what I was doing. And it's like, oh, let me try this. And I'd see a lovely plant and, am I going out and bring it home with high expectations. And then, soon thereafter, dead plant, pot, tossed. So it gradually grew. My dad actually had a green thumb. We grew up, he would have a garden every summer. He worked full-time as a railroad engineer. And then I remember on his days off, and he would be out there tilling the soil, and we would reap the benefits of the harvest, all of his efforts, and, the snapping beans, shucking corn, and all of it was either canned or frozen because you did what you could to feed the family of 5 at the time, so it started there. And it was just a process over the years. And once I was married and our son was grown and out of the house, I had more time and I had more interest. And so it's grown. So, yeah, a lot of trial, a lot of errors, failures, but, and it's still a learning process. There are still failures. I have yet to grow a successful crop of watermelon and even sweet potatoes. How difficult can that be? But there we have it. But I've had some good results, and we're reaping the benefits of that as well. So yeah, and it gets me out of the house, outside where I like to be on the warm days, and my hands in the dirt. I'm one of those that loves to get my hands actually in the soil, and not have gloves on. And then of course, a week later, I'm still, trying to clean my
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's been a process, and it's a continuing process. But and how I ended up in the EarthBox, where we live here in the Shenandoah Valley, the soil, when I immediately learned that it has a really hard texture. Unlike what we had over in Charlottesville, which was the majority of that red Virginia clay, which gets compact, and you had to amend it with lots of additional good potting mix and nutrients. And I had to do that over the years. And then when I got over here, it was a completely different type of soil. There was a little bit of red clay, but it was a lot of like a sandy quartz material that had very poor drainage. I was trying to bring my some of my lovely salvias that I had over in Charlottesville to bring them here, and I was chiseling. I couldn't even dig a hole, and so I finally got a small hole, and I put water in there. I thought, well, let me put some water in there and let's see if it'll soften up. Several hours later, the water's still there. I was like, we have a problem. So that's where I started developing raised beds. And because it was the only way I was going to get anything in the ground. And so I started with raised beds, raising the level and planting, getting my flowers transplanted, of which I still now, we moved here in 2008, and I still have some of those salvias that still come here that the hummingbirds absolutely love. And they come up and they bloom in the, by late spring, they're already blooming, and they will continue blooming through the summer until a very hard frost, very much unlike the pineapple sage. These are, they tend to survive our zone 6B here. So the raised beds, but then it posed a problem. I wanted to expand. Okay, so I've got flowers. Well, I want to try some veggies. What am I going to do? And I'm limited because we have, our backyard is broken into two sections. The one is where the back deck extends out to a big above ground swimming pool. So I'm limited, plus the dogs. So we have a side backyard. So, well, I could do it there, but it's a lot of shade trees. We have lots of red, I guess they're red oaks, the neighbors, and we have maples. So I'm limited with what I can grow. And so I had to look at options, and that's part of gardening. You've got to know what your setting is. What's your lighting going to be like? It's not, oh, I've got great morning light. You need to know where's the sun shining at any given point in the day. What's the length of sunshine? Some plants require a lot more sun than others. Some can survive with filtering. So that is part of the learning process. So I tried different methods. I even tried growing tomatoes in buckets. And it can be successful, but I had to start early, and I had a really small greenhouse. So that it was getting crammed, and it was hunched over. I was like, this is not fun. Gardening needs to be fun.
Gardening needs to be fun where you can feel like what all that effort you're putting into has an opportunity to produce the fruit of your labor, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you want results, but you also want to be able to enjoy it. You don't want to be stressed and being fussing. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, and I've evolved with that. I've evolved through the years with dealing with that. So I'm now, as I continue aging, I'm discovering that less is more. Also, whittling down the garden to where it's more manageable has worked. So I was looking at options, like I've got to find something that's going to provide me with a better way of growing. I can't plant in the ground; it's too hard. I didn't want to have all these raised beds. I wanted mobility. So I started looking at options, and I stumbled across EarthBox. I was like, okay, so I read up on it. And so the EarthBox, it's a self-contained gardening system. It was the original EarthBox. It was actually developed by a fella for the commercial tomato business down in Florida. They were having problems with the flooding. The rainstorms can ruin crops in a matter of just a few minutes down in Florida. And there's also the loss of the nutrients, spending a fortune in the nutrients, the irrigation alone during those really dry periods. So it's these commercial growers were looking for something that was more cost effective for growing their crops. And so this fella came up with this self-contained gardening system. And what it is it's a box that has the EarthBox has a plastic open mesh tray that fits over it in the bottom, and there is the room in between that and the bottom of the box that is your reservoir that will hold, I forgot how many gallons, several gallons of water. There's a tube that goes down into the box that goes to that reaches the reservoir, so you can actually add the water down into the tube from the top of the box. And then you fill it with soil, a good potting mix. And from there, they quickly discovered that the boxes will it's a wicking system. So it wicks, the water is absorbed up from the bottom up into the soil that reaches those roots, the bottom roots, and the plants will only absorb what they need. The nutrients, the lime and the fertilizer, they have a ratio which they provide a chart and the instructions with how much, what they recommend to use. And I'm like, well, my gosh, this is so easy. And so the first few boxes that I got, I immediately planted them. And that first summer, I had the most amazing crop of tomatoes, cucumbers. In fact, the tomatoes were still coming into the first part of October. That's when we were at the Hawk Watch, and I was bringing bags of tomatoes, the little cherry tomatoes that Gabriel would be, I was like, here, Gabriel, and he would just sit there and eat them like candy. So I couldn't give enough away. They were just coming in. So the first year was just this huge success. And so I started adding more boxes, and now I have them set up on the north end of the house, but further away so that they get sufficient light. And I've been successful in growing a variety of vegetables, even corn. You can grow corn in these boxes. I have not yet found anything that I've tried that won't grow other than the watermelon. The watermelon, actually, they fill out, and I just don't like the production. I get only like one or two fruits. I want more. I feel if I'm going to put that effort into planting, I want more than one or two little tiny melons. So that's when I say it's a failure. Maybe that's the variety I have. I don't know, but when I look at the back of it, it has, vines full of melons, and I'm only getting a yield of one or two. Yeah, to me, that's not productive. So I'm mixing the watermelon, but the cucumbers, I get more than I need for the pickling, canning that I do. The tomatoes, I had to decrease the amount of plants that I was doing because there's only the two of us, and we couldn't give them away fast enough.
How many tomato plants do you now do for just the two of you?
Just for the two of us, each box for tomatoes, because they're such heavy drinkers. So they recommend only 2 tomato plants per EarthBox, the original size. And so I will do no more than 4. And I prefer the heirloom variety that have the robust tomato, just full of flavor. The good tomato sandwich. Yeah. I strive for that. And then I try to find a good sweet, the small cherry type tomatoes. I've grown Roma tomatoes, which they're good in salads. But the cherry tomatoes are just as good. And yeah, so that. So most of my crop now is cucumbers, the bell peppers, and I've tried to do the zucchini and butternut squash. And I'm planning to get back to growing corn this year. I'm planning to do corn, and eggplants. Oh my gosh, they're great. The EarthBox is great for eggplants, and well, I've got some photos to show.
I look forward to showing the box and the photos. Now, let me ask you this. Do you, and maybe as you're showing your pictures, you can tell me, but do you start with seeds? Or do you start your plants by purchasing plants, or what do you do with your?
I do both. For several years, I actually grew from seed, everything. I grew from seed. I actually had a small greenhouse set up in the guest bedroom with grow lights. My husband kept saying, the police are going to come knocking on the door. The neighbors are going to say, you're in here growing stuff you're not supposed to be growing. So I had it complete with, it was covered in plastic, and I had the shelves with the seedlings coming up. And I would actually start early so that by the time I could plant them outdoors in the earth boxes, they were well-established plants. After a while, it was, that took a lot of time. And we were starting to travel in the fall. I mean, in the early April, when our son and the grandchildren, they moved out to Indiana. So I'm like, wow, there's not going to be anybody here to tend to the seedlings and stuff. So I had to adjust the game plan. How am I going to do this? So I now do a combination of seedlings, the seeds, and the young plants. I actually found a nursery that's up in Dayton that has a lot of heirloom varieties of so many different wonderful veggies. So I go up there late April, 1st of May, and I'm talking they're very inexpensive, and I calculate that it's a lot less expensive than for me to do it myself, and the supplies and everything and the time. So I will go up there and get what I need and come home, and then I will go ahead and transfer those to the earth boxes, or I will direct sow. Beets, I prefer to direct sow beets. They do better if you direct sow. So I'll do the direct sowing into the earth boxes with the seeds. And zucchini. Zucchini is so fast growing. I mean, as soon as you plop a seed and it's warm enough, I mean, you're talking within 2 weeks' time, you have a well-established plant on the way. So most of the time I will just plant zucchini from seed, and I will do that sometimes with cucumbers. In fact, there's only 2 varieties of cucumbers that I prefer for pickling, and that is Market More 76, and the other one is just a bush type, or actually a vine. It's a climbing, not the bush, the climbing pickling, or what they call the Boston pickler. But for some reason, sometimes you can find them right away around here, and a lot of times you can't. So I went and found a packet of climbing pickling cucumbers, and so I use those 2 varieties for my sweet pickles and the sweet relish, and then the bell peppers, because I use the bell peppers and the relish. I don't grow onions, I guess because they're just not that expensive in a store. I mean, we use a lot of onions around here, but I figure I don't have a cellar. So you can't store onions and potatoes but so long if you don't have the proper storage for them. And we don't have that. So that's why I don't grow potatoes and or the onions. I haven't tried garlic. I'm not sure about storing garlic, but I just figure I'll get it at the store.
The earth boxes, you could potentially grow potatoes in them, but it would have enough depth to do that.
I'm not sure about that. Because when I tried the sweet potatoes, I actually had a really oversized plastic tub.
Okay.
and they grew. They looked great. The vines, I followed the instructions, but by the time harvest came, when I was like, oh man, I was just waiting for this. All I had were these little skinny tubers. So
Wonder, what do you think is the difference between like the EarthBox self-watering system and just growing in a container, like getting something that you might drill holes in and growing in that?
okay. One of the things is that growing in the container, you have to be sure that you have to stay on top of the watering more. If it's sitting out and you have storms, the water will collect. You could potentially end up with a very soggy container, even though it could have well drainage, because after yesterday's deluges that we had, I've got pots, big pots that were really sopping. So that's the kind of thing with container gardening. They also tend to dry out quicker. With a self-contained irrigation, what they call a subterranean irrigation system, as long as you keep the reservoir filled, it won't collect water because it has a drainage system, so that when the water level reaches up to a point, it drains out of the box. So you don't have that problem with the
Drowning.
yeah. And then during the early growing process, while the roots are forming, they're not really soaking up a lot of water. So you don't have to fill the reservoirs that often. Maybe every 3 days to top it off, if that. But then once you have the fruit is under production, in full production, like especially tomatoes and cucumbers, on those really warm days, excuse me, the change in weather. So you have to stay on top of that. And most oftentimes during the really peak production period, as the fruits are ripening, I have to usually get out there and really fill them up almost every evening. But it's just a matter of pulling my hose and putting it down into the tube. And then I know that it has filled up when it starts flowing out from underneath. And then I just go on to the next box.
Nice.
But then again, you can also set up the irrigation system. But for now, because I've reduced the number and I've been home, not traveling, I'm here to monitor the watering and keep the boxes topped off. So that's the big advantage of doing the self-contained with the water reservoirs with the wicking system. The plants don't get overwatered. They're not stressed. The only time they would get stressed if you don't keep the water reservoir filled. But yeah.
That's awesome. So do you want to show us your earth boxes or pictures?
Yeah. Yes. Now let's see. I'm going to share screen. See if I remember. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm now in screen sharing, so this should work.
Now, I think you might have to move your Zoom window
Down.
Down so you have access to your desktop.
There it is.
Good. Yes. Awesome.
And then I have it set up. There it is. Okay. Oh.
Daniel and I had the earth boxes when Gabriel was little, before we moved to the farm.
Yeah.
And in Charlottesville. And they were so wonderful because in our driveway, we grew a couple of tomato plants and it was so easy and so successful.
Yeah.
So I have to pull my boxes out again for this year. But, wow,
Okay.
look at that. So that's what it looks like.
That's the EarthBox, and it's set up with this has the plastic cover, which not only helps to control the weeds, but it also helps contain the moisture. Now, it also has two colors. This is on the black side, which will absorb more heat. If you were in much warmer areas, much further south, say in Florida, then you could reverse it so that it's on the white side. So it would not absorb as much heat because it's already hot down there. And then the tube, I don't see the tube on this, but the tube is going to be in one of those corners. And then if you see down here, that's the drainage. The EarthBox has one drainage for the overflow, and it's over there. And the tube would be, it's either in this corner behind the flowers or in that corner. This is the recommended planting guide that EarthBox provides. Very great. So as you're looking down on the top of the thing, of the box, it shows you, here's your water fill tube. And depending on the type of plant, this line, it represents the
fertilizer strip.
And the fertilizer strip, I'll get into how they do that. So here you have, so if you're planting artichokes, eggplants, tomatoes, zucchini, and summer squash, they recommend only 2 per box. So if you're planting 2 crop varieties in one box, this is how you would lay it out. Here's your fertilizer strip along the one side, and then in front of the other side, you have the 2 plants. And then for cucumbers, melons, winter squash, they show how to lay it out like such. So more than 2, then you put the fertilizer strip in the middle, and then your 4 plants. I can tell you, I've done 4 cucumbers in an EarthBox, and I'm going to tell you what, you talk about a mass. I now do no more than 3 per box. And I actually have mine climbing up a trellis. And this then goes and shows on your peppers, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, celery, hot peppers, strawberries. I actually have a box up on the deck with strawberry plants. You can grow herbs. I have one box dedicated to my mint for my mint jelly. So this gives you a layout. You can grow beans, and look how many, 16. Wow. So 8 per row with your fertilizer strip in the middle. Beets, spinach, turnips. It's amazing the stuff that you can grow in here. So these charts come with each box, or you can go straight to their website, earthbox.com, and they have all the information you need. They even have blogs and people, they're happy gardeners who share their stories.
Now, I see that it does say you can grow carrots.
It did. Now, this is the side of my house facing the north end of the house. So this is actually the northwest corner, and it does get plenty of sun. It was pretty barren, and so I have down on the ground, I put commercial grade weed barrier, and then I decided to put as many boxes as I could, and I do have walking space in between the rows, and I set each of the boxes on cinder blocks, so it helps to raise it up. It also helps to keep the other advantage of growing this way. We have problems with varmints. especially voles. And voles can be very destructive in planting beds. I've lost quite a bit of stuff over the winter where they moved in to one of my flower beds over the winter. Not happy. But so, and we also have issues with stray cats and the problems that they cause. So, so this has helped to keep them away. They're not being, my planting beds aren't being used as the personal potties, toilets for the kitty cats. And we also have possum that roam through. And I'm sure probably coons, although we've never seen them. So this helps to keep it up off the ground. This is in the middle of this. I do have the corn growing. And I was so pleased. First time I've ever grown corn, and it was successful. And oh my gosh, it was so good. But I was so surprised that I was only getting 2 ears of corn per stalk, and I was expecting this bountiful crop. And I researched and discovered, oh well, the Silver Queen corn is 2 to 3 per stalk.
Now, how many stalks did you grow in the EarthBox?
I think I had 8 in there. I think it's 4. Actually, it might have been.
It was
in the maximum in there. It was either 8. I think it was 8, 4 on each side. So all of those that you see right there, the corn, that's all in one box. And then I had, tomatoes. It's kind of hard to see here, but for tomatoes and cucumbers and my pepper plants, I will add marigolds. Marigolds are great insect repellents for a lot of things. So I have found that it actually works because I don't like to use pesticide. And I will do everything possible to avoid having to do that. So thankfully, I've not had to use pesticides for my cucumbers and the tomatoes, cucumbers, and the peppers. Also the same for the eggplant. I do get something that loves to eat the leaves of the eggplants. And that's fine. I still have a good, I still have a successful crop of eggplant. Not so with squash beetles. I've had a big problem with squash beetles. And the one method I found that has worked is that in the fall, I make sure that I clean out everything out of the boxes. I keep the soil in there, but I clean all of the vegetation. And then I will then spray insecticide around the box, cover the box, and then in the spring, when I go to what I call getting it prepping for planting, I will then use an insecticide and direct spray on the outside of the boxes and underneath on the cloth and the cinder block. And that has actually helped to reduce the problem with, it doesn't eliminate it, but it has helped to reduce. I did get them to show up later, but by that time I had pretty much gotten all that I could from my plants. Before I've actually lost plants, because the beetles will actually start eating and destroying as they're growing and maturing. So I've lost quite a few crops, and so I was racking my brains. How am I going to do this? So that's where I have one set of earth boxes, and I think right in there I've got about, I think there were like 7. I've got about seven boxes there. This is cucumber plants, and I think if you look, this is 3 plants, 3 cucumber plants. They say you can have 4. This is just getting started, and I've got a tall, I'm actually using their trellis system. So I've got the double for the double height. And you can see that is all just from 3 plants, and it's still growing. The cucumbers are just starting to flower. so I usually limit it to no more than 3 plants per EarthBox, even though they recommend 4. Here's the corn. 1, 2, 3, 4. It does look like it was four per side, middle, the fertilizer strip in the middle, and then the other 4. So a total of 8 per box. And I'm telling you, it was the sweetest. Oh my gosh, the corn was so good. It didn't last long. I need to grow more. And then they're ready for, just about ready for picking.
That's awesome.
I have grown pole beans. Now this trellis system was a DIY. I had some PVC pipe on hand, and then the twine, and so I rigged that up, and I actually had a pretty good crop of beans. And I actually grew those from seed, so they're just starting out. And this is on the back end of the driveway, so I have boxes set up there as well. But now that we have an RV, I've had to move it further back, and I've reduced the number because I'm not growing as many different veggies as I did before. But so yeah, very successful. There's one of, oh my gosh, I'm just ready for a nice homegrown tomato sandwich right now. But just amazing crop. Eggplants. Just plop them in and they just go to town.
Now, when you're choosing the plants for your EarthBox, are you mindful of the fact that it's going into the container as a plant? So are you changing the variety you might choose versus what you would plant into the ground, or does it not matter?
No, I just want to make sure that it's a good tasty variety, that it's hardy for this area. And whether it goes in the ground or not, I don't think about that. I'm just thinking more along the lines of flavor. To me, if I'm going to grow something to eat, I want a variety that's going to be tasteful. It's like, people, the commercial growers, they're growing for large quantity. And over the years, the quality has greatly reduced. For example, some of the melons, I'm just so disappointed. The cantaloupe, I want homegrown, sweet, juicy, you smell the flavor coming before you open it up. You can't get that in a lot of the commercial grown stuff. So if it's going to taste good, I'll get it. And that's where I find a lot of the heirloom varieties come in play, especially for tomatoes. I want a good, juicy, meaty tomato when it comes to slicing for a tomato sandwich. I just remember growing up, my dad and his tomatoes. Okra. I grew okra one year. You just did? I like okra. I said, well, what the heck? Let me try it. And it grew and it kept growing and it kept growing. My brother-in-law in Florida had these plants in his front yard, and they had the most beautiful flowers on them. And I was over there and I'm like, what is this? He said, it's okra. I said, okra? I never knew they had such a beautiful flower. And I think that's one of the main reason I decided to try growing okra, just to see, if I could do it and, if got the flowers. Well, I did get the flowers. I also got all this okra, and my husband does not like okra. Okay. But it kept my neighbors, my wonderful neighbors from across the street. He came over one day. He had to see what I was growing. He said, he said he said they keep getting taller and taller. He was saying it was like Jack and the Beanstalk. He wanted to know if I had some of Jack's beans. But yeah, they just grew and grew and grew. And I mean, they were just tall. And they did produce, as you can see, the okra were growing. It didn't eat much of it, unfortunately, because Keith he wouldn't eat it.
Well, Indian girl who now lives in the South has never eaten okra, so I'm going to have to eat it someday.
My preference is fried, and I don't usually eat a lot of fried foods anymore. So that was one of the reasons I didn't do much eating of it. It has to be cooked a certain way, So, but he was from the South, but that's one thing he doesn't like. There's the zucchini. Very productive in producing zucchini, as long as I can keep the squash beetles at bay. Butternut squash. Wow. Yep. Butternut squash. Oh man, fresh made butternut squash with homegrown squash. It's and this
is so much more nutritious
and these are some Roma tomatoes that were coming in. I have to use all kinds of trellises and stuff to keep these, because they grow so big. That's the thing, is that it's a lot different than just when I tried to grow them in containers. I didn't have these results. I would get some production, but nothing like I'm seeing growing in the EarthBox in these self-contained units. Beets, there are some of my beets. The first time I had beets that weren't out of a can were these. And oh my goodness, there's no comparison. The rich, robust flavor of homegrown beets, fresh picked out of the garden. Yeah. And this is another thing. This is another veggie that my husband does not like. And I actually don't mind getting pickled beets out of a store if it's a good variety, and just sit there and I can make a snack out of beets. And here's some of the crop one morning's pickings. So I had some jalapeno peppers, and I think that was, I forgot which one that one pepper. There's the okra, and these were some different kinds of peppers, and then some tomatoes and the little cherry tomatoes. Another batch. So yeah, so just lots and lots of good stuff. There's my big bowl of sweet relish.
Have you back, and you can do a little video online with me.
Yeah, this is there's my sweet pickles. I found this recipe. I grew up on homemade bread and butter pickles, and my dad also did. I don't know if y'all ever heard of them. 14-day pickles. And I've actually made those before. And this one, I found the recipe, it's kind of similar to bread and butter, but if you notice, it has cinnamon sticks in it, and you add a touch of vanilla.
Interesting.
And now they're my best favorite sweet pickles, and my husband loves them as well. And herbs, great for growing herbs, even flowers. I have salvia, red salvia in here. This is basil. I think that is rosemary in there, more basil. So yeah, you can grow here's my mints. That's right here on the back deck. And I actually use all my mints to make my mint jelly. And I love my mint jelly. It's nothing like store-bought. And that is the color, the natural color of mint. It's not green. I have actually won a blue ribbon for my mint jelly in the Albemarle County Fair many years ago.
Nice.
So here is the now the EarthBox has a competitor now. and it's called the City Pickers. And it is, now this is more of a squarish box, whereas the EarthBox is long and narrower. This one is more squarish. It's a little bit shorter on ones on the ends, but it's close to being a square. And instead of one overflow, it has two, one on each side. I actually bought one, but I haven't set it up as yet.
Right.
But the thing is that where I want to use it is inside of a grow tent that I actually have set up inside the house for now. And the having two overflows means I need to have a tray to capture the overflow water. Instead of just one, I'm going to either have to find something that's long enough or have two trays set up underneath to catch the overflow. But other than that, it's very, now here it is set up. And if you can see where it is at the base of it, you can see how wider it is, deeper than than the grow box is. And this is a picture I got off the web to show. And this one does have its own black, it has a cover to go over for weed control and moisture control as well.
And
this shows how it's set up.
Yeah. So it has a tube as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is how the EarthBox is. So you have the base, and then the water. There's a level for that contains the water, and then a plastic grate that has openings for it's what they call the aeration screen that fits down over top at the bottom, and then the tube goes into the one corner, the water filled tube. And then once you plant it, once you get it filled with the dirt, the potting mix and all the nutrients that you're going to need, then you can cover it and then start planting your veggies. This is my first City Picker box. It is less expensive, and they're actually sold. The City Picker boxes are actually sold at Home Depot now. And so they're complete. So one box is complete with it has the wheels, it has casters, so you can roll it around, or you can leave the casters off and set it up on a like I would probably, if I had it outside, I'd set it up on cinder blocks. This is inside my grow tent. I just bought this. I have plans for this grow tent. So right now what I have in there, I just set my tray of seedlings, which are some herbs, and I also have salvia seeds for my flowers that I picked last fall. So I collected seeds and then planted those about 12 days ago, and you can't see it with this picture, but I do have nice young plants that have emerged, and I have a fan set up to help circulate, that has a good airflow, because this is completely encased. It's a 2.5 by 2.5 foot grow tent. It's tall, so if you had any tall plants, you could continue growing them in there. And I have I'm able to control the heat. I use LED grow lights in there. So that's my my new toy there. To get some seedlings, I decided, well, I'll go ahead and use this to get some seeds started. I need to, what I want to do is have some kind of a tray system, a shelving system that I could at least maybe have 2 shelves that I could have seedlings. But I haven't been able to find anything yet that would work. So that's on the drawing board. So maybe by next year, I'll have something that I can start. I can have more seedling trays going in there with the grow lights. So that is, And I saw this. This was someone posted this down. This is a Florida EarthBox. This is an EarthBox, and a little frog popped up so apparently it was down there in the checking things out, and up popped a little tiny frog. You never know. I haven't had that to happen. I mean, we have lots of tree frogs around here, so it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I do get them to go into my earth boxes on the back deck, and they'll sing for us at night, but I have yet to see any to pop out of my reservoir. Okay, so
What kind of soil do you put into the earth box?
Okay, so what I use, which is also one that's recommended, I use Miracle Grow potting mix, not potting soil, potting mix. There is a difference, a big difference. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know the complete details, but I do know that in just looking at the two and handling the two, there is a difference. There's some nutrients that they've added, but you don't want anything that has moisture control. So what I do is, I think a 50 quart bag will fill a earth box. I buy mine in the 50 quart bags, and you can find them this time of year. Lowe's is like my second home this time of year. So I will set up outside, and then I get I have a big container, like a big bucket. You need it really big. So you put your soil in, your potting mix in there, and then I add a little bit of composted cow manure. I also add some peat moss, not much, and a little bit of perlite. And I mix that up, and that helps. You've got a good mixture. Now, I will then fill that in following the instructions. They do provide instructions on how to do that, so that the wicking process will work. So you follow the instructions on how you place the mixture into the box, and then you add lime. Now they recommend dolomite. Now, which is typical, is organic, the organic. I have discovered that dolomite, even though you use the recommended dosage, I end up every time having blossom end rot with some of my veggies, like tomatoes, especially the tomatoes. And that is very frustrating when you follow the instructions. And they always say they do not recommend using garden lime. Well, my father used garden lime. My grandparents used garden lime. And in fact, before the age of the EarthBox, I was using garden lime, and I never had this problem. In fact, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, what is wrong with my tomatoes? And I was just shocked, and just, oh, what, the beautiful plants and everything looks good. And then the tomatoes themselves, you don't know you have that problem until they're starting to grow, and then they start getting the black ends. So I had to do research, and I found tucked inside on their website, it wasn't readily there. But after reading through quite a bit of materials on their site, they mentioned that if you end up having a problem with that, they had a remedy where you added garden lime. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go back. So what I do is I will sometimes use dolomite, but add garden lime, or I will just use garden lime. And it's a case of kind of judging how much over the years, I've determined, okay, this is about how much garden lime I put into it. And I just use my garden fork, and I just work it into the top several inches of the soil, the potting mix, and then I will prep the. You bring all that to the level of the top of the box. Okay, so once you get all your soil and your all your mixture up in the lime, you have it level to the top of the box, not sunken down. You make sure it's in there and level to the top of the box. Then you take a trowel, and then depending on what you're growing, and follow the chart that they provide, you take your trowel and just dredge along the top, either on one side or in the middle, to make a little trench. And then you will then use it's a slow release granule fertilizer, and they give you recommendations. A good 777 or 10-10-10 is good. And you don't want time release, and it's got to be the granular. It's the slow release granular, and you just evenly. I use a measuring cup and just evenly spread it across inside your little trench that you just troweled out. And then you take more potting soil. You don't need to have that with the lime. You can have just the plain potting soil, and you build a mound. You start adding it to the top of your fertilizer strip to cover it, and you form a mound just over that strip. And then you cover it with your plastic bonnet. I call it a bonnet, but the plastic cover. The plastic covers can get pricey. But so a couple of years, what I have done, I have used inexpensive plastic, dark black plastic bags. And I then will, you can, if the bags are big enough, like a 30, 40 gallon bag, and you can find some that are really, the big boxes that are really inexpensive, you can then, you don't have to open it up, and you just drape it over the top of the box. And I use twine, inexpensive twine, and tie it down. And then you cut your openings where you plan to insert your seeds or your plants. And that's it.
Now, have you ever grown lettuce or other greens in the garden box, and does that do well?
I have not. I have actually a cattle trough or livestock trough that I have used to grow lettuces and also collard greens. That does really well. This last year, I converted the one I was using for, I turned it into a water garden. And so I now have a big barrel planter that I just finished prepping actually yesterday. I got that prepped, and that's ready to plant with collard seeds. So I haven't, because the boxes I've got now are being used for the cucumbers, so I don't have an extra one. So, and then by using another container, a large container for the lettuces, I can then, once the season's over, I can plant something else in it. And usually I'll plant, like for my collard greens planter, that once those collard greens are spent, then I'm going to plant my zinnia flowers in there. Yeah. So.
And then you talked about the soil preparation, and that's when you're first starting the box, right? So at the end of the season, when everything you've grown has grown and you've harvested it, yeah, what do you do to prepare it for winter? And then what do you do the next spring? Do you reuse the soil, or what's that process?
Yeah. Okay, so you do not have to remove the potting soil, but what you can leave that in there. But what you do want to do is, of course, you remove all of your all of the dead canes, all of the dead flowers, the plants. You remove those. You also will remove the fertilizer strip. So you just take your trowel. You'll need a bucket. You'll take your trowel and just you just do it in just slow and easy, and you just trench up underneath and then scoop out the fertilizer, and you'll see the remaining pellets, and scoop that out into your bucket. And then have your cover. So what you need, you want to empty. The hardest part is making sure it's, you want to drain any collected water. It's not so easy to do because those boxes can be heavy. So it's best if you can, once I've learned that once you finish, the garden is, everything is died out. If you can't get to what I call winterizing right away, try to cover it with another trash bag or another bonnet that has not been cut for your plants. So you want one that's not been used, and then secure that over so that it doesn't collect any more water. And then because you have to tilt it, you have to tilt that box with the soil out so that as much water will drain out at the bottom of the at the opening. And that's a little trick. And sometimes the box can get away from you, and you're like, ooh, and you're out there scooping the dirt up off the driveway or the tarp, whatever. But the rest of it, so you do that, and cover it for the winter. I learned the ones where I have the trellises, I used to take the trellises off, and then I would do the oversized lawn bags, and they would actually work and drape them down over. But I still would end up with a tangled mess. I was like, how could that happen? So I now leave the trellises up on the boxes, and I take the trash bag and slip it down from the top, and it goes. And these large, I have like a 50 or 55 gallon lawn bags, and they actually sit down over and will cover the trellis with the netting, and it's all ready. So by next spring, when I go to open the boxes up and removing the plastic, so I can start prepping again, the trellises are already in place. So when the winter months pass, and then like this time of year, it's too early to plant outside, but it's not too early to start prepping the boxes. So I can go and open the boxes, remove the plastic, and go ahead and start adding the lime and the composted manure, adding it to it. And I might have to top it off with a bit more potting mix to make it level. I will not add the fertilizer strip until I'm ready to do the planting, but it's okay to go ahead and do the lime and the composted cow manure. And then I will cover it back up until it's time and safe to do the planting. So you don't have to wait until do it all at one time. So as you have available time, when the weather cooperates, then you can get out there and start getting them ready for the next planting.
Awesome. Well, Brenda, thank you so much for everything you've shared. You've inspired me to go find my garden boxes in my basement and start getting them ready and try it again, because you're right. It's such an awesome way of being successful at gardening. And
yeah.
Do you have any last words of wisdom for us as we consider this kind of gardening? No, it's other than just do what you know works for you. More importantly, enjoy it. Don't stress over it. There's going to be failures,
But at least you're doing something that you want to enjoy. So enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Fun.
it. And I'm just going to